I had a couple of people post some comments on my Browning slash Norinco SA-22 video talking about their rifles, and a couple of them talked about not ever wanting to take it apart because they were afraid that they would never get it back together. And I just want to make this quick video just to show you shouldn't be intimidated by this sweet little rifle. You just got to know how to deal with it. First thing I'm going to show you is how you remove the barrel and forend from the receiver, and that has to be done first. You push this forward, push it in and push it forward, and it's in that position there. You grab the receiver, not the stock, grab the receiver and you give it a quarter twist clockwise, and the barrel will pop off, and I'll demonstrate that. After you push this notch forward here, you pull back slightly on the bolt, holding the receiver, twist 1/4 inch, and pull the barrel off. So the barrel and the forend, this is why this is called a takedown. You can take it down, pull this back, that takes the pressure off of the breech here, a breech face, and that is easier to turn and take. Push this back. This will move forward enough that you can pick the whole thing up out of there. Come up backwards. Okay, and there's your bolt assembly and your trigger. Alright, so we've got the trigger assembly, trigger group, and the bolt firing pin assembly out of the receiver. And what I'm going to attempt to do is take this apart in front of the camera here with the camera in front of me. And this is very difficult to do, especially your first couple of times. It's still difficult for me. I'm no expert at this. I'm just going to show you how I do it, and maybe this will help you to get yours apart and finally clean it like it should be cleaned and back together without being too intimidated. Now, you'll notice that our firing pin housing and our firing pin is cocked. You'll also notice that this is our recoil spring. Okay? This is your nemesis here when you're trying to get this back together, and even for some folks when you're taking it apart. You cannot remove all this stuff, the bolt carrier from the trigger group assembly, the recoil spring, and all of this with the gun in the cock position. So what you have to do now is, if it's cocked, just pull the trigger, and you see the bolt kind of raise up there, and that's good because that's going to give you some leverage. Here's what I do. I generally take like a small screwdriver like this, just nothing special, and for the recoil spring, well, my thumbs may get in the way here because this thing is under a lot of tension. It's not like it's a 308 or anything, but it does have some giddy up to it. So I want to take that off slowly, keep my thumb on top of it, and try to show you as much as I can. Whoop, there she went. And there's the keeper that came out of the spring. And that's how it comes out, right there. Now you want to be careful with this because you don't want to kink it, putting it back in. So we still have our bolt and firing pin assembly in here. And all you have to do with this is not under a great deal of tension, but it is under some, is move it forward and lift up the rear of the bolt, and all of this will come out together. And that is your firing pin spring, firing pin housing. Okay, we'll go over that stuff here in a minute. Lay all that together. Last part of the assembly, your trigger group, and we'll look at our bolt. Pretty basic Nice machined bolt. This is wear from shooting. Nice finish on it. Here's our extractor. And we can take that apart as well. It's not that big a deal. There's a pin right here that holds the bottom. There's a spring back there, a little spring underneath here, a little bitty guy. You got to really watch it. Drive this pin through. This part slides down. This bottom part right here slides down, and everything slides out the groove. Then you got a little bitty spring, and you need to clean all the gunk out from behind there as well. Put it back together. Firing pin spring, firing pin, go back into the firing pin housing. This goes. This is where your recoil spring goes. Firing pin assembly. You have to get the angle of the dangle on this when you put it back in. This has to go on the bottom, the flat part, because that's what catches on that catch I showed you here. That catches right on there as it comes back. Drop that in. Just goes down in there. This is, I do this one first because it's the easiest. I push that down in there. Hold that with my finger. Yes, it is painful. And then I let that back against this little detent. Now this sometimes takes a couple of attempts, but it's not something that isn't doable with a little practice. We insert our recoil spring into there. Now this part of it may be difficult for me to show you. You don't want to kink this, and if you just try to cram it in there, you see how it starts to kink and fold up into the air or into the weapon. You don't want none of that. Here's how I do this. I keep the spring as straight as I can, and I bring as much of that pin down through there. If you can see it working its way down through there, and you'll get it to a point to where it's mashing into the bolt. Okay, so I do that, and then what I do, whoop, almost lost it. It's got oil on it. Then what I do is I get her hooked on that little notch. Oh. I didn't say it was easy. Yeah, I'm about to lose it here. Get her hooked on this notch. Bingo. Sorry, I didn't get that in frame, but anyway, you get the idea. You want to put as much of that pin down in that spring, compressing it along the way. Okay, and then what I'll do is after I get all these back together, I'll cock it. And that takes a lot of the tension off the bolt, and it's not trying to buck up here on me. Alright? So, there it is, ready to go back in the receiver. Very lightly lubricated. You know, you can run it without lube. The main thing that I lube is these little rails right here. Receiver. Ready to receive. And you have to pull this back so that it fits down in there. Then you see that the rails are sticking up above the receiver, so you have to slide it forward till it drops down, pulling that back all the way, and then that drops down right there. Back in, let her go, and she's back. Let's do that again. The bolt in, push it forward, drops down and back. That's how she goes back together. Cocked. Everything works. Okay. So we take our receiver, holding the receiver, not the stock. You can have a little bit of your hand on there, but the main torque is going to be on the receiver. The barrel comes back into play, 1/4 turn, Slide that into the receiver, everything level and straight. It locks up tight. You give it that quarter turn. Get your lug back in the middle here. Okay, you want to make sure that's nice and tight. No wobbles, no rattles, as that will detract from your accuracy. So that's how you take her down. So that's it, the Browning SA-22 takedown. Hopefully I wasn't too confusing there. But just more pretty. So that's how that's did.